In our previous lesson, we looked at chunking, and we said that chunking is a process of breaking down information into small pieces which are easy to understand and learn. Now, before going to the steps which are involved in forming a chunk, first I would like us to look at some examples of how to make a chunk. The first example we are going to look at is learning to play a musical instrument. It can be a guitar, it can be a drum, it can be a violin, or any other musical instrument. If you are new to that instrument and you want to learn how to play it, the first step will be watching someone who knows how to play the instrument playing the instrument. Then the next thing, you will learn how to hold the instrument. Then the third step, after you have known how to hold the instrument, you will start learning playing some musical notes using the instruments. And after learning to play several or various musical notes using the instruments which you are learning, you will be able to put all these musical notes together and make the music. Now, the various musical notes which you have learned are like the mini chunks. When you put them together to make the music, that one will be the larger chunk. And through practice and repetition, you will become an expert in playing that musical instrument. Another example is an example of learning skills, let's say in sports such as football. The first thing, you will grasp and master skills which are required in learning how to play football. These skills can be stopping the ball, striking or kicking the ball. You will learn how to control the ball, how to dribble, how to receive the ball, how to pass the ball to your teammates. Now, once you have learned all these skills and tricks of playing the football, you become a professional football player. Now, each of the skills which you are going to learn are like the mini chunks. Then when you put all these mini chunks together, you are going to get the larger chunk. And in that way, through practicing and repetition, you become a professional football player. Let's look at an example of learning a language. When you want to learn a language, the first step, you will start learning the alphabets and the sounds of that language. Once you have known the alphabets and the sounds, the second step will be learning words in that language, how to pronounce them correctly in the correct accent. The next step will be putting those words together to make simple sentences. Then after some time, you will be able now to creatively combine sentences and speak that language. And through practice and repetition, you will become proficient in that language. The last example, let us look at an example of science and mathematics when you are learning sciences and mathematics. In most cases, first of all, you will start learning a concept by being given an example which has been worked out, mostly in mathematics. If you want to learn a new formula on how to solve a problem, the first thing you'll be given the formula and you'll be given a worked out example. Now what you are required to do is to go through that example. The next step will be for you to understand why each step has been used. What are the principles which underlie that step? Once you have known all the steps and why those steps have been used in all those stages throughout the problem, the next step will be now to solve similar problems which are related to that formula. Now through practicing, you will be able to understand when and how to use that technique or that formula which you have learned in science or mathematics. Now generally, these examples show us the process of forming a chunk, how to form chunks and acquire new information or new skills which you are trying to learn. Next, let us look at the steps which are involved in forming a chunk. There are three main steps which are involved in forming a chunk. The first step is to focus your undivided attention to the material which you are trying to learn. Undivided attention means that when you want to form a chunk, you are required to eliminate all the distractions and focus your entire attention to the material which you are trying to learn. If there is music which is playing, or if there is a TV which is running, or the notification from your mobile phones are disturbing you all the time you are checking your mobile phone, you are supposed to eliminate all these distractions. Look for a place which is quiet and you can concentrate on the material which you want to start chunking or learning. Now this is what I mean by undivided attention. Undivided attention is very important because when you want to learn new material, we use our working memory. And our working memory has 4 memory slots. These 4 memory slots helps our brain to connect, our working memory to connect with other parts of the brain and learn the new material. If there are distractions, they are going to block some of these slots and you will not be able to grasp the material which you want to learn. The second step in forming a chunk is understanding the material which you are learning. It is very important to understand the basic concepts of the material which you are learning. These basic concepts will enable you to establish connections between what you are learning and the materials which you have learned previously. Understanding is like a super glue. It helps you to connect the memory traces of what you are learning with things which you have learned previously related to the material which you are learning. Therefore, understanding is a very important step in creating a chunk. It is only through understanding you will be able to create that big picture perspective of the material which you are learning. And when we talk of understanding, it is not just the superficial understanding, because when you are learning something or when you are listening to somebody teaching you, you may understand at that particular moment which that person is teaching you, or that particular moment you are reviewing the material. But without practice and repetition, you will not be able to retain whatever you are learning for a long period of time. You may be in a class and the teacher is explaining something, and you may think that, aha, I have understood whatever he is talking about. But if you don't review whatever you have learned after a period of time, when you go back to that material, you will not be able to understand. That's what I mean. Therefore, for you to develop true understanding of what you are learning, you are supposed to practice yourself. Do whatever you have learned yourself. And if you are able to do it, it means you have understood it. The third step in creating a chunk is to gain context of the material which you are learning. By gaining context, I mean knowing when to use the material which you have learned, when to use the concept which you have learned, when to use the technique which you have learned, when to use the formula which you have learned. This is what I mean by gaining context. It is putting what you have learned in a broad picture or a big picture perspective. It is establishing connection between what you have learned and the things which you learned previously. That is what it means by gaining the context. So that you are able to apply whatever you have learned in different ways. So that you are able to use the knowledge which you have learned to solve the problems which will face you at different angles. That is what it means by gaining context. And how do we gain context? We can only gain context by practicing the knowledge which we have learned. It is only through practicing you will be able to know when it is possible to apply the knowledge which you have learned, and when it is not possible to apply the knowledge which you have learned. Therefore, it is very important to know how and when to use the knowledge which you have learned. If you don't gain context, it is like having a tool in your toolbox, but you don't know how to use the tool. But if you gain context of the material which you have learned, it is like you have a tool in your toolbox and you know exactly when to use the tool and when not to use the tool. In summary, we can say that for you to make a chunk, first you need to focus your attention on the material which you are learning. Second, you need to understand what you are learning. And third, you need to practice whatever you have learned so that you can gain the context and create the big picture perspective of the material which you have learned. and establish connection with the knowledge which you already have. For these few remarks, I hope you have understood the process or the steps on how to make a chunk.